On all this, we're joined by our panel of experts. Elizabeth Ashford is a political consultant who works often with Democrats. She's worked for multiple California governors. And Matt Klink is a Republican strategist, as well as the owner and president of Klink Campaigns. Welcome back to both of you. Great to see you. The big headline of the night, though, is about Maine. So let's start with that. Graham Plattner coming in after receiving all sorts of allegations from the New York Times about some relationships, some women claiming that he had acted inappropriately when he had dated them. This is what he said to the crowd tonight.
Redemption is not just some simple or easy destination. It's a journey. I've made mistakes in my life, mistakes that I regret, that I live with, and that I continue to learn from. And I'm still far from perfect. But every day I wake up and I try to be a little bit better and a little bit kinder than I was the day before. And if you give me the chance, I will be a senator for the people who cannot afford to buy a senator.
There are a lot of critics of this guy, and yet the voters seem to be drawn to him. Why is that?
Well, as we know, flirting with Nazis and sexting women that aren't your wife are not things that push you out of contention for these jobs.
You say flirting with not, he's got a tattoo that
yes,
that
he's a tattoo that, is, and so, I think that, if that was true, then Donald Trump wouldn't be president of the United States. So it's very obvious that voters are willing to overlook things that are, frankly, pretty bizarre about this candidate. He's a broken vessel. We'll see if he's so broken that the Democrats choose to replace him before the primary rolls around. They can do that. That is an escape hatch.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not that surprised in the sense that if you're voting for him, you're already ticked off at the status quo, and you're going to be voting for the person who's communicating that. And I think he did successfully do that.
Let's talk about how important Maine is, Matt, because there is no path for the Democrats to win the Senate without Maine. Susan Collins somehow wins election after election after election in a state where she probably shouldn't. She defies all political reality, and got to give her credit as a campaigner to do that. How do you see this race?
Both parties got the candidate that they wanted in this race. Susan Collins wants to run against Graham Plattner, and Plattner, 70% of the 34% of Mainers that are Democrats voted for him. His problem is not with Democrats. His problem is with Republicans, who he won't get, but more importantly, with the roughly 30% of Maine residents that are independent, and primarily with older white women voters. I don't see them voting for this guy. And he has a Nazi death head tattoo on his body that he referred to as my little Totenkopf. And this is what I love about the Democrats and the irony. All women should be believed, I guess now, except if you're running for Senate in Maine.
Well, you mentioned, Elizabeth, this escape hatch. So our pal Ron Brownstein, who's with us next hour on The Story Is, wrote in Bloomberg today a column about that very topic, which is essentially if Graham Plattner voluntarily steps aside before July 13th, that the Democratic Party could then nominate a replacement, including some candidates for governor who are well liked in the state. Not all of them are going to make it to governor. One of them could end up running for Senate. You think that's a better play for Democrats?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not there, and I think that because he ran on such a focused, affordability message, I think that's where, he was able to break through despite all of this. I will say that I think that, it's very hard from across the country to sort of predict the behavior of folks within a state. He's obviously, like I said, he's a very broken person, obviously, in some ways. But again, is it going to be enough to swing the party in a different direction?
But
to be determined.
Some might see that as authenticity.
They might
right?
see
That
it as
at a time when all these politicians, are too manicured and feel really inauthentic, the fact that this guy has been through problems and feels more real, I think may be a reason that some people are drawn to him. And maybe that toughness.
I'll tell you. He has a compelling narrative, but he has to sell it right. He tried to soften himself today. Yeah. The guy's an oyster farmer in Maine. he says he's not bought and paid for by anybody else. Well, he's bought and paid for by his daddy's money. They come from money. But he could tell a good story. And Elizabeth is right. We don't know how upset the Maine voter is with the status quo. That's his opening.
And there could be an Eric Swalwell moment. There could be a level of allegation that really does tip things in a different direction, and that's why this escape hatch is important. More could come out.
It's interesting with the Swalwell thing here in the California governor's race. He was essentially knocked out in like 20 minutes.
Yes.
Graham Plattner, there's been this drip, drip, drip of stuff for a long time, and he's been able to survive all of it so far. Not as serious allegations as what came against Eric Swalwell. Let's talk about that governor's race, which Eric Swalwell is no longer in. But Steve Hilton is in, and he's going to face off against Javier Becerra, the Democrat on that side. How do you, as a Republican strategist, see this race? Does Steve Hilton have a chance in this largely Democratic state?
I think that Steve Hilton is going to give Javier Becerra fits because, as we were talking just between the two of us, he's much more smooth and comfortable talking on TV and in front of audiences. But this is a 60-40 race. I mean, the math just doesn't work for a Republican candidate, and I don't think that the decline to state or the no party preference crossover vote is going to be there.
And to that point, I mean, Hilton has to appeal to Democrats and independents. And just today, we were showing video of him. He was doing a rally in front of the registrar's office with the chairman of the Republican Party behind him and a bunch of Republican candidates talking about the issue of voter ID. It looked very Republican. Now, he is a Republican, but is that the kind of opening message that you want to send to Democrats that may be frustrated with the status quo, but are uncomfortable with the idea of voting for a Republican?
I mean, this is the problem with the Republican Party in California, is that they've continued to pursue strategies that don't resonate with voters, and that's why they've continued to, as Arnold said, lose at the box office. And Hilton is repeating those mistakes. He's doubling down on these inane Trump-driven narratives that are not true, and as a result, that kind of alienation is going to continue. You know, he will be a formidable campaigner, but he cannot win in California. It would take a different kind of Republican.
What would that kind of Republican be?
It would be moderate. It would be somebody that recognizes that Californians are mostly moderate and like to be motivated by economic policy and lifestyles and immigration.
Someone who breaks with Trump.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then could that person make it into the top two?
They'd never clear the Republican primary.
I mean, as I said to Hilton on the night that he got Trump's endorsement, a lot of people feel like you just made it into the top two guaranteed and lost in the November guaranteed as well. Yeah. We'll see, though. This is why they run campaigns, and we'll hear Steve Hilton's perspective in a little bit here on The Story Is. But for now, Elizabeth and Matt, thanks so much. Great to see both of you, as always.